kasha that if you hold that the chilazon is anything but the murex, how is it hayitachen that they found excavations, they found digs and caches of murex frontal shells, and yet if the chilazon was something else and there were so many millions of yidden and over the dairis when they had the Techeles that nothing should have been found from the real chilazon. So the emes is that such a kasha, I think it's a ridiculous, it's ludicrous that you're talking about a span of about 40 miles from Sulma to Tzur to Haifa, although it's basically should be along the coast, but you're talking about, I don't know, a mile, 2 miles, and to say that just because you didn't find something, it's like saying from here until the middle of Staten Island, you didn't find a dig, which they never looked for it because no one's interested really in looking for this. They happen to have found the other things, but so to say that because they didn't find it, memele it's mukhrach that there's no other thing, because if there was something else, they would have found it. It's very, very difficult. You'll find, I'll show you soon, that there was things that were sitting under the archaeologists' nose, mamish under their noses, and they didn't find it. And to say that just because they didn't find it over such a long... But besides that, what's even more is that if you assume that it's not the murex, so then what is it? Maybe it's the cuttlefish, like the radziner. Maybe it's a toilas, which is like a worm, a slug. According to Rashi, it sounds like. Maybe it's a dag, a fish, according to the Rambam. So what are you going to find? What are you going to find? I don't know what you'll find. I don't think you'll find anything. If it's a fish, what are you going to find? If it's a snail, I understand you find a shell. But if it's anything else than that, which it looks like it is something else, so then what do you expect to find? There's nothing that's going to be left over. So a kasha that you didn't find left over something or other from the chilazon must be that it's not anything else but the murex. Very, very difficult. One of the malachim, one of the kings, the most erliche kings that Klal Yisrael ever had was Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. He was, by the time of Sancheiriv, a little bit before the Churban Bayis Rishon. The pasuk says about Chizkiyahu Melech, Vayas hayashor be'einei Hashem, kichol asher asa David aviv. The Torah mamish, the Navi compares him to David. He did mamish kichol asher kol David aviv. The Acher of the pasuk says, Lo haya kamayu b'chol malchei Yehuda. After him, there was never a king like Chizkiyahu Melech. V'asher hayu lefanav, and nothing like him before him. So you're talking about somebody who's Chizkiyahu Melech. Could have been Mashiach, the Gemara says. And it says by Chizkiyahu Melech, it says something very interesting. Pasuk says it the pasuk says it in Malachim, really. And it's referred to in the Mishnah in Psachim. The Mishnah in Psachim says that there were 3 things, or actually 6 things that Chizkiyahu did. 3 things the Chachamim weren't maskim to what he did. One of the things that he did that the Chachamim were maskim was Sosam Mei Gicha Yoel Yoy. He blocked up, he stuffed up the springs of Gichain. Now this has nothing to do with the Nahar Gichain that's referred to in Bereshis. That's in Bavel. That has nothing to do with this. There was a spring, we'll see in a second. And he was seising it. What is this referring to? Where is the makar for this? What is this all about? So the pasuk says in Malachim, at the end of the life of Yecheskel, the pasuk says, "V'yeser divrei Chizkiyahu, v'chol gvurasai asher asa es habreicha v'es hata'ala." He made a breicha, which is like a pool, and a ta'ala is like a channel, like a tunnel. V'yave es hamayim ha'ira. He brought the water to the city, which is the city of Ir David. Halayim kshufim al sefer hayamim divrei Malchei Yisrael, Malchei David. In Sefer Divrei Hayamim, there's a little bit more of an arichas of what exactly was going on over here. Sancheiriv Melech Ashur had come, and he was coming towards Yerushalayim with his army. And Chizkiyahu HaMelech was a little bit nervous. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you don't have to worry. V'ganoisi esair, I will protect the city because myself and Leman David Avdi. Leman you, Leman David Avdi. But Lamaisis Chizkiyahu HaMelech felt that he has to take certain precautions. Sancheiriv is coming with the Gemara in Acheli goes through with the amount of the army that he had was not shaykh, and he knew that soon he's going to be laying siege on Yerushalayim. Now Yerushalayim is up on a mountain, so I mean it's always never good to have like a siege around it, but it's a little bit protected because anybody who comes has to go on the bottom. And what Chizkiyahu HaMelech did was he fixed up any holes or any cracks in the wall, but besides that, it says, Vayar Chizkiyahu ki bo Sancheiriv upanav lemilcham al Yerushalayim. He's heading to Yerushalayim to set siege, to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Vayivatzim Sarav, and he was miyayitz with his generals, V'gibayrav, listoim es meimei ha'ayonos asher michutz le'ir, that they want to stop block up all the mayonos, the springs, the wells that were outside the city. Vayikoptzu amrav, they gathered a lot of people. Vayistimu es kol ha'mayonos, and they blocked up all, they stopped up all the mayonos. V'sanachal ha'shoitef b'soich ha'aretz leimor, lama yavayu malchei Ashur u'motzu mayim rabim. Why should we supply water for Ashur at our expense? Klal Yisrael Yerushalayim, their fresh drinking water came from the Mei Yichai, from this spring. Came to Yerushalayim. Now, when Ashur comes, they're not going to have a lot of water. But if they have this spring, they're going to have water, and Klal Yisrael are not going to have the water. So what he did was, Sosam Mei Yichai Na'elyon, the Mishnah says. He had his men, and they stopped the Mayim from going where it was supposed to go, and they dug a channel, a tunnel under the ground, and they had it come down to Ir David. And the pasuk says that they did it. And this was one of the big things that Chizkiyahu did. In the beginning of the 1800s, there were historians, there were archaeologists that read this information in other sources, and they said it's something that's impossible to do such a thing. They said, first of all, number one is, we're archaeologists here in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, that's so much history and so much information that they dug up every inch of space. They knew everything in and about and around Yerushalayim. And they said, this is something that we, for sure, it's saying exactly where it was. It came down to Ir David, and it was started from Mei Yichai, and we never found it. It's Lo Yehoyav, Lo Yitzachayim. That's number one. Number two, they said that the engineering that you would need to dig such a tunnel through the mountain is something that they were too primitive in those times. They weren't so sophisticated when it came to engineering, and it was something that's impossible for the Messias to do. That was the beginning of the 1800s. In 1838, there was a fellow who did a lot of excavations, and a lot of what we have today is Edwards Robinson, and he dug somewhere, and boom, he found it. He found this cave. This cave started off Taka by Mei Yichai outside Yerushalayim, and it made its way 1,500 feet of tunnel. They carved 1,500 feet, and it went mamish down to Ir David, to what's today Mei Ashiloya. Anybody could go. It's called Mei Shlech. It's in Siloam. It's Ir David. It's the Arab place over there. It's not so safe, maybe not to go there. But there's a pool of water over there that goes through. You can walk up the tunnel. It's a tremendous tunnel that not always is so wide, but it's a tunnel that goes through for 1,500 feet. They didn't know. They knew exactly where it was, and for years they claimed it's not shaykh because it's impossible. They would have found it. Now, not only was it under their nose and they didn't find it, and this is called Ma'aris Chizkiyahu. Not only did they find it, but for 42 years after they found it, there were thousands of archaeologists walking through it and regular people walking through it. And only in 1880, which is 42 years later, did somebody notice a plaque on the wall that said something. That means it was right there. They didn't know the whole tunnel. They couldn't believe that it existed. They didn't find it. They knew where it was. And they said, if we didn't find it, Lo rainu is a raya. And then 42 years later, somebody by mistake, somebody was swimming there, and he saw a plaque on the wall. And he brought down and they checked it out, and they were able to piece together a very interesting thing. It was written in Lashon HaKodesh. And what it said was, it seems that there were the people that were digging, they came from two ends. And the engineering was not shaykh. They can't believe how they were able to do these things. And they came and they met at a right angle. And they met exactly where they were supposed to meet, not higher, not lower, not further. They didn't go too far. And it seems that one of the groups of the diggers were waiting, and it wasn't broken. And they writing in the thing. I guess they had maybe a little bit of time, and they were writing in the thing that we hear the garzain, we hear the axes banging away. It sounds like it's 3 amas away from here, and soon we're going to meet them. We're going to join forces over here, and the water's going to run down. And they write certain things about how much water's going to go and how high they were. It says that they were 100 amas away from the top of the mountain, which is roughly correct, which means that they knew exactly where they were going, what they were doing. And yet these things were there for years and years, and it was under their nose, and they didn't find it. Is it a kasha that you have a 40-mile span, and you're not looking for it even, and you don't find it, and you say, from the fact that I didn't find such an excavation, from the fact that there was no find, it's a raya that it can't be that there's any other chilazon than it. It's a joke. And therefore, now the shaila is, well, what is it? If it's not this chilazon, then it has to be something else. So Mirz Hashem, tomorrow, I'd like to go through now into the Gemaras and see what the Simonei Chazal are about the chilazon, and we'll see again if it shtims and what comes out.